Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This video is about a comparison between the divine law, the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the laws made by human beings. We know from history that the United States prohibited liquor, banned liquor in 1919 through the constitutional amendment, and that amendment remained in force, the prohibition remained in force till 1933, when that was repealed. So in about 24 years, they experienced that the law or the amendment that they had passed was not successful. So they had to repeal it. So in other words, liquor was banned through, through man-made law, and it did not work. Now compare that with the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At over 1400 years ago, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala banned alcohol, liquor. And since that time, the ban has stayed. And without enforcement by the police, by the law courts, without anything, that ban is enforced through the power of Iman. This is a very important distinction between how the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are enforced and how the laws made by human beings are enforced. People, when the ayat relating to liquor came, it is said that the streets were flowing with liquor. People emptied all the containers because they understood who Allah is. They understood the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They understood the power of the lawmaker, and they knew they could not hide anything from the lawmaker. So the enforcement came from within themselves. And this is the way of Islam, how Islam is enforced. When Iman comes into the heart of the people, then there is no need for anything else. The law has a very minimal role to play. The enforcement comes from within. Another example is how slavery, how racism came to an end when Iman came into the hearts of the people. We know the story of Bilal radiallahu anhu, who was a slave. And when Islam came, how he was honored and how he was respected. On the other hand, in the United States, a law was passed, a constitutional amendment was passed, the 13th Amendment, that stopped slavery. But even 100 years later, another law had to be passed, the Civil Rights Act in 1964. And even after that, till this day, which is 2020, racism is still alive. And we hear all types of problems all the time. So even with all the laws, with all the enforcement mechanism, with the police, with the speeches, all kinds of efforts, nothing has worked, and nothing will work. So that's another example how Islam enforces the laws. Racism is in the heart. These are diseases of the heart. And Rasulullah came to work on the hearts of the people. When Iman came into their hearts, they themselves started enforcing the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just imagine when a person is fasting, nobody is watching except Allah. But he remains hungry, he remains thirsty, because he knows Allah is aware, and this is the commandment of Allah. And by the way, the commandments of Allah are not there to benefit Allah. Allah is not a lawmaker who benefits from his laws. His laws are made for the benefit of mankind. Allah is the only lawmaker who makes laws for the benefit of mankind, whereas other lawmakers make laws for the benefit of themselves or their particular group. These are big lessons for people to understand that the corruption, the greed, the problems that humanity faces cannot be solved through the legal process. The secular mind keeps passing laws. They think all the problems can be solved through a legal system and through resources. And the examples we have in Islam, like how alcohol was banned, how gambling was banned, how riba, interest, how it was banned, and how it was enforced. Without the help of any legal system, the legal system played a very minimal role. And the whole society was transformed. We saw the results of those commandments that came over a period of time. When the commandment came regarding women covering, it said, when one woman heard the news that there was now a commandment of Allah regarding covering, she sat in the street, she didn't even move, and asked her son to bring a sheet so she could cover herself. A person committed adultery and went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and confessed. A person committed theft and confessed because the iman had come to a point where they realized that if they are not punished in this world, they will be punished in the next world. So their belief became so strong that it was not necessary for a police force to be watching, because when they realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching 24/7, nothing is hidden, and there is going to be accountability. See, this is the way of Islam, that it works on the hearts of the people. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam worked for 23 years on the hearts of the people. When the hearts changed, then their behavior changed. And all the things that we see today, all the evils, they existed at that time also. They started disappearing. And the best society that human history has seen came into existence, where there was true love and brotherhood among people. They were sharing. The rich people were sharing their wealth. Interest, riba, disappeared. And an economy started that benefited people. Today, the economic system is such, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And the people who have control of the system don't want people to know that there was a time when this kind of exploitation ended. So the diseases of the heart, the problems that exist today, are not new. The things we see in the society, the immorality, the things we see in the economic system, the exploitation, the things we see in the whole social, political system, the corruption, these things were there at the time. When the teachings of Islam came, then these things vanished. And they remained that way for hundreds of years until the Muslims forgot the teachings of the Quran and the Hadith. And they started following in the footsteps of the unbelievers. And they brought destruction upon themselves. This is a lesson for everybody. The history is there for people to learn from it. The United States has all the resources, has all the technology, the money, everything is there, but they were not able to enforce the prohibition. They passed a law, but they had to change the law. The Civil Rights Act is there, and the police and all the system is in place, the legal system, everything is in place, but it's not possible to eliminate this from the hearts of the people. And politicians make speeches all the time and encourage people to be united, but all the speeches don't have any effect on the people. And this problem continues, and every once in a while it erupts and leads to violence. So why people are not paying attention when there is a solution? When there is a solution to this problem, why they're not looking at the solution? Is it because they don't want a solution? Is it because they're not aware of that? We know that all these talks, all the speeches that the politicians make, there is no reference to a time in history when these problems existed. Racism existed, exploitation existed, but these problems were eliminated without spending any resources. So, are the people ignorant, or they are aware and they do not want people to know about it? So this is a question that people should ask. When the solution's there, just imagine there is a drug, there is a medicine, that is a cure. And the doctors are not telling anybody. The doctors are keeping quiet about it. And of course, the people will not know until the doctors tell them. This is a big tragedy human beings are facing, that millions and millions of people are suffering from all kinds of problems because of the disease of the heart, because of greed, because of hatred, because of malice. All these things that exist in the heart have effects on human life. We hear about human rights activists and efforts to bring success to humanity, and so many institutions all around the world are spending millions and millions of dollars trying to improve the human condition, and nothing is happening about it. And we have a success example in the life of Rasulullah, the greatest humanitarian of all times, who in a short period of time brought happiness to people, to millions of people. And those people who are abiding by those guidelines, by the teachings of the Quran and the Hadith, are experiencing that in their life. This is the responsibility of the Muslims to educate those who do not have this education. We think education is just limited to science. The education of sciences is fine, nobody disputes that. But education of science is not going to eliminate racism, is not going to eliminate the problems of the heart, the diseases of the heart, the hatred, the greed, all the wars that are fought for what? For domination, because of greed. When Rasulullah came, the warfare among the tribes that had been going on for centuries, it came to an end. When Islam started spreading, there was so much peace. It is said a woman could come unescorted from Yemen to Medina, laden with gold, and nobody would do anything about that. There was so much peace and security, and people were all the time trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Lives were changing. Prosperity was coming. So when there is a success model, it has to be used. And of course, the first people to use that should be the Muslims themselves. It is unfortunate that the Muslims themselves have abandoned that model because of the teachings of the rulers of the countries that ruled them for hundreds of years. The mind changed, and they started thinking that the best way to rule, the best way to live, is to live the life of the conquerors, the people who conquered them and exploited them. And this is a tragedy that the educational system left by the British is still in place, that is still teaching the people the wrong values, is still teaching the people the things that lead to more misery. What is causing the disease, they think there is cure in that. And the media has to take great responsibility. If they're truly honest, and if they fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that one day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to question them and question these politicians, why they're not educating the people with the right education, why they're not giving them the right values, why they're still continuing with the system of exploitation, why they're not using the remedies that are given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who knows about remedies, the cures, more than Allah, the one who created the human being, the one who knows what his needs are. Nobody knows the needs of a human more than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a need for mankind today. People are suffering all over the world. Islam is a need not just of the Muslims in the Muslim countries. It's needed in the United States, it's needed in China, it's needed in Russia, in Japan, all over the world. So education of science is going to solve some problems. Science will help people to live more comfortable lives. But science cannot teach people how to be human beings. And no matter where one lives, the problems that humans face will only be solved through the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the responsibility of the people who are knowledgeable in Islam, people who have read the Quran, the people who have read the Hadith, who are aware that there was a time when society was at peace, society was prosperous, and that model needs to be brought back. The models that are being presented in front of the world, they have all failed. We know when the communist movement started, it started as a result of the exploitation under the capitalist system. When that was put into place, there was a new exploitation. And that experiment failed. So most human beings think that there are only two possible ways of living. And we know both these ways bring more misery to mankind. And the Muslims who are in possession of a system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given are keeping quiet about it and just following in the footsteps of those who have already failed. So when you're following a model that is a failure, you're not going to be successful. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the understanding of Islam and also the ability to follow in the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa akhir dawana in alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.